Doctors aren't mask experts. They bring in what? An OSHA professional, Occupational Safety Health Administration, government agency that focuses on air quality and what you need to do when wearing a mask, how to wear a mask. How about one of those experts? Or how about two? That's exactly what happened, and it went viral. Maybe you remember this.
We're very familiar with the whole mask conversation. It really hits kind of near and dear to both of our hearts, which is why we're paying very close attention to all of this, and we are very concerned as environmental health and safety professionals. Let's talk about masks. All right, so what do we know about this virus to begin with? We know that this particular virus is incredibly, incredibly tiny. It is so tiny that it's between 0.06 microns and 0.125 microns. So what that means when it comes to masks, and the homemade cloth masks in particular is really the hot topic that we want to address. They do literally nothing to protect you from disease transmission. Okay, so everybody talks about mask up to protect your neighbors so you don't kill grandma, all that kind of thing. This is what you're hearing from people. Well, what you need to understand from a virology perspective is that that mask is not protecting anybody around you at all.
So what we're trained to do in a work environment through federal regulations, through OSHA, is not what we're seeing at the hands of our governor. We just have this blanket mask mandate. And the issue with that is we're not following any other protocols. When you just tell someone to slap on a mask, you don't know any of their medical histories, and you don't know the conditions in which they're wearing the mask, and you don't understand what they may be doing. This is why we wanted to get together and talk about this, because the whole mask usage, there are so many guidelines you must follow. And these homemade masks, while I totally understand the intent is to be kind and selfless and help others, they're actually dangerous.
I am honored to be joined right now by Tammy and Kristen. You guys, when you put out that video, when you decided to really start talking about masks, what made you, well, let me take it back a step. What does it mean to be an OSHA expert?
Well, for me, I spent 9 years on active duty working in bioenvironmental engineering. What we do is we act as liaisons with government agencies and workplaces to make sure that they are upholding OSHA law and environmental law, because everyone has the right to a safe and healthful work environment. So we are credentialed in all the OSHA laws and the hazard risk analysis involved, and we just make sure that companies are compliant.
Now, when I think of masks, and think about most of the studies that we've looked at here on the High Wire are about, medical professionals, doctors wearing masks in very sterile environments. We've talked about really a mask in the ORs just to keep them from drooling into the cavern.
Right.
It's really not about virus and things like that. But who knows more about masks? The doctors wearing them, or you actually go in and train doctors how to wear them and fit them? So is it, where do you think that line is when people say, well, my doctor says, and they know more than Tammy Clark? What would you say to that?
Right, yeah, so this has been one of our biggest issues because doctors specialize in medicine. OSHA professionals, PPE experts like Kristen and myself specialize in PPE and respirators. So our world basically revolves around taking a workplace and with doctors or nurses or surgeons, that happens to be the medical systems or the surgical environment. And so we go in and we assess the risks and the hazard in that work environment, and we determine what type of PPE or respirators they need to be wearing and why. And then we train them on how to properly don and doff their PPE, how to properly wear it. We have to do a medical evaluation to make sure they are fit enough to work in that PPE. Then we have to do fit tests and things like that. We don't explain all of this to the doctors and nurses. They don't need to know all the technicalities behind what we're doing. All they know is, I can work in a surgical mask all day and it's not really that big of a deal. They don't even understand the ASHRAE standards and the increased ventilation and air cycle exchanges that go into the mechanical designs and the HVAC designs of that hospital environment. They have no idea for the most part, unless they're like an OCDOC, an occupational safety and health doctor, who is trained to also do some of this. But there's very few of those professionals compared to the overall, healthcare worker environment.
You actually have a private company, your own company, right?
Yes.
That actually deals with PPE,
Yes.
and this is what you do.
That's what I do. Yep, I have been a consultant for many, many years. As an OSHA credentialed professional and a court-approved subject matter expert. I was in the university setting teaching for a while, but I was just getting so many requests to do things on the side, and of course I had kids, so I couldn't do it all for very long. So I started my own company about 10 years ago, and all I've been doing for the past 10 years is compliance, training, testing, working with all kinds of industries, from hospital settings to construction environments, basically helping to make sure that health, safety, and compliance programs are in place so that no matter what type of pathogen or exposure we're talking about with that particular company, their employees are safe.
So, obviously, I mean, I said last week on the show that I had said some time ago, masks is not the hill I'm going to die on here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as we start hearing that, you know, even when there's a vaccine, you're still going to be wearing masks, that none of these things are going to change. So we're now seeing a world of masks, a future of potentially wearing masks forever. As professionals, when this all started, when you started seeing them, and first it was locking down, right? It was social distancing, and then this mask thing seemed to come out of nowhere. And we saw virtually every professional, from Fauci himself to the Surgeon General, saying, oh yeah, you don't want to wear a mask. In fact, it might even spread the illness. At the very least, it's going to do nothing at all.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
So we recommend that people who are sick wear a mask. We recommend that people who are around someone who's COVID positive wear a mask, but do not recommend that the general public wears masks as a protective mechanism.
Why did you decide to, what was it in your world? I don't live in a mask world. This is what you do for a living. When you started seeing on the news, we want everybody in the country wearing masks, what was your first thought?
Well, that was the red flag for me. That's why I jumped in and got involved. I mean, it was all very concerning to me because it didn't make sense. But originally, when the experts, including Dr. Fauci, was saying, healthy people do not need to wear masks, there's no need for that. And then all of a sudden, we started getting this COVID fatigue, and we were kind of getting over it at about week 3, 4, 5, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden now, everybody flip-flops, and oh, we need to mask up. And I went, whoa, 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 we don't just mask up. That is not only illegal and it violates our civil liberties, right?
Right.
It is incredibly dangerous and unsafe and unhealthy. And that's when I started speaking up, and that's how Kristen and I met.
Well, also, within my career field, I used to work in hospitals, and I've sat on numerous infectious disease boards. And what I did is I sat and educated nurses, doctors, surgeons on how to deal with flu outbreaks, the SARS outbreak. So I knew, yes, there's something called the hierarchy of safety and controls. We have the engineering standards, there's work practices that you change. PPE is a last resort. But when you're dealing with infectious disease patients, these are not the masks that you wear. Even N95s are not fully rated to protect against a virus. These micron sizes, again, they're not rated by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They're not approved for this use, so not only is this a bad idea, there's numerous studies for years based off of the flu outbreaks across the world several years ago that not only do these ear loop masks and cloth masks not work, they're increasing the spread through fomite transmission, which is a form of cross-contamination. You're touching your face. No one is trained on when you're supposed to change these out. No one is trained that when they're soiled or you're working in a humid environment. These things increase the spread. You re-inhale your exhausted gaseous waste, and you can increase your viral load. So if you are ill, not only can you continue to spread it, because you're not understanding the hand hygiene aspect of that, but you will be sicker longer.
Speaking of inhaling your own gases, I actually did a video with my son Ever. For anyone that might have missed it, I got false flag information, false information. This is not how you do this, but let's just revisit that moment. This is my son Ever when we tested the masks on him. This is my son Ever. Ever's 11 years old, and here in Texas, the mandate right now is that 10 and over have got to wear a mask. Ever has to wear a mask wherever we go. And so we bought this thing this week. This measures the amount of CO2 that's in the air. Can we just look at the OSHA numbers? Carbon dioxide levels and potential health problems are indicated below. From 250 to 350 is the background normal outdoor level. 350 to 1,000 ppm typical level found in occupied spaces with good air exchange. 1,000 to 2,000 level associated with complaints of drowsiness and poor air. Obviously, I don't want ever to have drowsiness or poor air. 2,000 to 5,000 level associated with headaches, sleepiness, and stagnant, stale, stuffy air, poor concentration, loss of attention, increased heart rate, and slight nausea may also be present. And then 5,000 ppm or more. This indicates unusual air conditions where high levels of the other gases also could be present. Toxicity or oxygen deprivation could occur, meaning do not hit 5,000. All right, here we go. Right now, we're at 848. So I'm going to go ahead and just insert this right like as he did, right underneath, and try and keep it. That feels pretty tight right there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can just breathe naturally. Let's just see what happens. Okay. All right, so we're at 1,367. We've already just passed 2. So now we're in the place where he could be having headaches. He can be, we're at 3,786. Look at this. We've just passed 5,000. Now we're in the toxic level. Right now we could be doing this 7,000 inside this mask of the CO2, 8,000 parts per million. And now this thing's gone off the Richter scale, folks. Deep, calm breathing. I think we got the idea right. So we've hit 2,000, which is now we know is not safe for any school or any workplace environment. 4,000. Now we're going over 5,000. Now we're into what's known to be a danger zone, 6,000. Parts per million, CO2, 6,600. This is a cloth mask. I thought when I was wearing a cloth mask that this was actually safer. So up in the 9,000s with both of these masks. Upper 8,000s. Unbelievable. So in that video, all we did, now, number one, it said false information. That Dell is saying that it reduces the oxygen wearing a mask, and that's not true. Now, number one, I didn't have an oxygen monitor. So they were wrong right there. I didn't buy an oxygen monitor. I bought a CO2 monitor. I mean, we went online, we found a good CO2 monitor, we stuck it up in the mask. Now, I can say, and then I saw arguments, well, he didn't have it there long enough. If you watch the first mask he's wearing, he's there for over a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it just keeps going. The CO2 goes off the charts. I mean, we go above 10,000 parts per million, so the monitor couldn't register any longer. But, I mean, I get it. I'm taking the monitor, I'm just sticking it up under the mask. Did I just get an incorrect reading? Is that not how you would do this?
No, we saw that and we were like, he's doing it right.
Del, you did it exactly right. In the world of industrial hygiene, and I'm a senior industrial hygienist, when you are going to test breathing environments or hazards that can be inhaled, you test in the breathing zone. The pulse oximeter test is dealing with oxygen, blood gases, and it just blows my mind. You did it exactly how we're trained to do it in school and out in the field. That is what you do. And the type of meter that you had is instantaneous. And it's designed to be instantaneous because a lot of times those meters are used in confined spaces where you have oxygen deficiency and you immediately have to know. And another aspect of that is you don't even need to do the meter test. The studies have been around since the 1970s that, yes, masks can decrease oxygen by 20%. This is exactly why prolonged mask use is not approved in the workplace. If you were to wear a mask 8 to 10 hours a day, like some workers, that goes against OSHA law, and you have to implement work rest cycles. They're not allowed to be in masks this long because we already have the data that shows prolonged mask use is unhealthy.
So we have, I think now, here in Texas, last week we were talking to a bunch of parents. We're all sending our kids to school wearing masks. Everybody's wearing a different kind of mask. Some kids have N95. I've even seen kids with 2 masks. They've got the N95, then the blue one over it, and then the plastic face shield. And they're going in for hours at a time. And I remember one of you, I think, in the video said that when any company is going to start masking for whatever reason, that you go in and test the health of the person and you see if they can handle a mask, correct?
Yes, that's what OSHA's respirator standards are based on. We know we have all the studies, like Kristen said, that shows oxygen levels are reduced by up to 20% by putting on a mask, by covering the mouth and nose, for a prolonged period and breathing. It doesn't take very long. Like you with your test with your son,
Yeah.
the CO2 levels went up quickly.
Yeah.
O2 levels drop very quickly as well when you do the direct read test like what you did with an oxygen monitor, right?
Yeah.
So we have the studies. This is why OSHA created a respirator standard in the first place, because the NIOSH studies are there. NIOSH is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They're basically OSHA's sister agency that does testing. Okay, so we've had these tests for years and years. So now to just tell everybody to mask up and it's not a danger is not only unethical, but it's illegal. So it's not legal in the workplace to allow an employee to work in a mask or face covering without first doing a medical evaluation to make sure that that employee can medically tolerate it, because we know it's very taxing to the cardiopulmonary system when you cover somebody's mouth and nose and then you force them to do their work. Even if they're not working and they're just sitting, it's going to tax their cardiopulmonary system because it changes the way you breathe. You have to forcibly inhale, forcibly exhale, and so it taxes the cardiopulmonary system. We've given people heart attacks by forcing them to do this, and that's why OSHA created the respirator standard in the first place. So the danger and the biggest issue here is OSHA's running around saying, well, this isn't PPE, so it's okay. That is not true. That is not true. When you force somebody to wear anything for protection against a known pathogen
What
or
difference
airborne
does it make
hazard,
what the title of why you're wearing it?
becomes
If
PPE.
this thing can cause a pulmonary issue,
Exactly.
whether or not it's PPE or it's just wearing it
Exactly.
for Halloween,
Right.
at a certain point you say, if you're wearing this for hours, it's dangerous. We've got to see if you're healthy enough to do that. We're making an assumption of every child, but when I think about it, how many elderly, that do have heart conditions and issues are wearing this now, wearing these masks, thinking this is protecting them? What type of risk are they being put at? And why aren't our nursing homes and hospitals and
Right.
retirement communities bringing in OSHA to say, can you test and make sure this person is capable of wearing this?
Yeah, well, the problem is OSHA is denying that this is a problem. I actually had a phone conversation with the director of the enforcement division in Michigan, and I said to him, your guys are running around giving citations to my clients in the field for not wearing masks or threatening them for not wearing masks. When I told them when this all started, look, you're working in the construction environment. It's hot. It was the middle of the summer. You're doing roofing work. You're doing whatever. You are not to be working in a mask. I would be remiss as a safety consultant and your acting safety director if I let you do that, because I know that that's going to reduce your oxygen levels. The last thing I need is for you to be getting dizzy on a ladder or on a roof, right? So you will not follow these guidelines and mask up. That's not only unhealthy, but it's unsafe. So I called OSHA about this, had a conversation with the director in Michigan who told me, I said to him, what are you doing? What is going on here? This is revisionism. You are not following your own standards. You know that it's very unsafe and unhealthy and we're causing oxygen deprivation. Why do you think everybody's complaining of headaches?
Right.
Nausea, fatigue. That's the first signs and symptoms that the body is struggling to meet demands for oxygen. And he said to me point blank, I wish I had recorded the conversation now. He said to me, Tammy, you will never get me to believe that. And I just said to him, I don't care what you believe. You're an industrial hygienist. You know what I'm saying is the truth.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you, Kristen, you were in the military.
Yes.
And you worked in the OSHA. I mean, you understood OSHA.
I
even
was
back-
actually an Air Force DoD liaison for OSHA. I was the highest level person in my profession with ties to OSHA. Not rank-wise, but my duty-wise.
Wow.
Yeah, I
So-
went to every OSHA conference, program, they wanted to hire me when I got out of the Air Force. I said no.
So both and thank you for your service. You protected this country. You also made sure that our military were safe when it came to wearing masks, things like that. But now you see this country that you defended, that you fought for. We're watching politicians make decisions with they don't know what they're talking about. Clearly.
No.
All right, how about this? You have Robert Redfield, head of the CDC, saying this is the most important thing you can do right here, more important than a vaccine. What does this make you think about this country and where our information's coming from?
Well, the first thing was, I thought to myself was, this has to do with some sort of lobbying. This has to do with social engineering. I could not wrap my head around how we've had OSHA's respiratory protection program in place as law since 1979. So this is not new for people like us. And when you have people who are not credentialed in this law or the science behind the masks, and it's not just about degrees, it's not just about the law. We've been in the field. I've seen nurses faint. I've seen surgeons have to walk out of rooms because it was too much. And those are controlled environments. So all I thought was, we are completely removing decades worth of data for a political agenda. That's the only thing I can tie it to. And I just wish that more professionals came forward, because not only is this not going to decrease the spread of infectious disease, this will increase the numbers. And think back to the culture of Asian countries. When they had the SARS outbreak, they started masking up. We have data from that time. And then it became, from information I have found, is it was cultural, and they were fashion statements. So why was there COVID-19 outbreaks over there when they had already been in masks?
That's a good point. So then here's the obvious question, the elephant in the room. Where is OSHA? I mean, the entire
Exactly.
purpose of OSHA, this is right in their wheelhouse. This is the watchdog for our country to make sure that anyone wearing a mask is safe. And I haven't seen anyone on CNN, anyone on MSNBC. Where is OSHA saying, hey, if this is what we did with Ever. This is what you're saying is too high a CO2 level. This mask is off the charts for my kids. So
Right.
someone wanted to explain to me from OSHA
Right.
how this is safe. Where are they?
Well, we would like to know the same thing. We have been saying the same thing. We have been screaming it loudly. In fact, we've talked about it. We'll probably lose all of our OSHA credentials. I'm being audited right now by OSHA because I'm being very vocal, and I'm speaking out because this is just simply wrong. This agency was created to protect workers in the workplace. Now they are enforcing on employers that employers are to be the mask police and force their employees to do something that we know by the data and the tests that we have is not only unsafe, but it's very unhealthy. It will create long-term health effects. That oxygen deprivation over long periods, not only is it immediately, you have that acute immediate issue with headaches and fatigue and nausea and things like that, but you're creating long-term health effects too. When you deprive the body of oxygen for a long period of time, it reduces immune function, it causes cancer to be able to grow and thrive, a more acidic environment, because you're increasing also the CO2, which causes hypercapnia and all of that. So where is OSHA? Why are they turning completely now and saying, oh, well, we know that this is a hazardous environment, and so they're lumping it under that. You know, we have an infectious disease, this is a hazardous environment, so in order to protect everybody, we have to do this. But they're creating a cure that's worse than the disease itself. And they know. Those within OSHA at the higher upper levels, they know. Kristen and I actually posted a conversation between an Amazon employee and an OSHA employee, and it was all video recorded, it was all taped, and we posted that on our pages.
Thank you for calling the U.S. Department of Labor National Contact Center.
Amazon has enough people that want that job for whatever reason that each individual employee is disposable. Right? They're not saying they're not really working with you and saying, oh, what if we did this or what if we did that? Since you're just a number, that we can find somebody to replace this person in any second. So we just give them this choice. You either wear the mask or you come up with a doctor's note. And by the way, the order from the governor, it doesn't have to be this certain material, the kind of mask that we see everybody walking around with. There's other alternatives that might be able to be a little less burdensome on you, but Amazon personnel is saying, we're going to make you do this, and they're going to get away with it, you know.
I guess I'm just pretty much out of a job if I can't breathe through the mask.
I think so.
OSHA is now, they're being weaponized is what's going on. They're being weaponized by governors. They're being weaponized to go along with this because it is an agenda of fear and control to social condition us.
So now tell me about, you sort of breaking a story here. You came in this morning, you said, hey, we have proof. We've got one of the heads of OSHA down in Florida.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
Yeah, okay, so we yesterday, 2 days ago, stumbled onto some information by one of the directors of OSHA in Florida named Aaron Sanchez. He wrote a thesis when he was working on his master's degree all about the efficiency and efficacy, basically, of masks.
Wow.
And this is really interesting because what we found, and I'm going to read a couple little blurbs for you because this is right out of his writings.
Okay.
Now he's a director of OSHA, and where are we going? Crickets,
Hiding,
right?
shivering in his
He knows,
basement somewhere.
he knows this is not right.
All right.
And yet, if he stand up and says something, he'll lose his job, basically,
Okay.
right? Okay, so he says, surgical masks are not designed to protect healthcare workers from airborne particulates and will not provide as much protection as N95 respirators. So he was studying a surgical mask or a face mask versus an N95, which is an entry-level respirator.
Right.
Okay?
Both sealed and unsealed.
Right.
Okay.
Because we know, and Kristen will get into some of the studies in just a minute, this was based on the 2015 studies that, and going back to 2008, that there has been infectious disease outbreaks in hospitals among healthcare workers, but yet they're all wearing surgical masks and N95 masks. How is this happening, right? So he studied then the efficacy and the efficiency of the different types of masks. And what he finds here, and it says right in his, I'm reading right out of his report, surgical masks have been recommended by the CDC as a last resort. Remember, Kristen referred to the hierarchy of safety and controls. In our world, that's everything. You don't start with PPE. You try to get the hazard out. You try to engineer it out using administrative controls or whatever. And if you can't reduce or eliminate the hazard, then we put people in PPE.
Right.
What OSHA has done is they have started out by putting everybody in PPE. So right there, they're not even following their own hierarchy of safety and controls.
Okay.
Let me keep going. When no National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, that NIOSH that I was saying, approved respirator is available. So we're supposed to be using them last. Now, using surgical masks as a form of PPE may lead to adverse health effects. Boom, mic drop, right there. Enough said.
Right.
We have a director of OSHA saying using surgical masks as a form of personal protective equipment may lead to adverse health effects. We know this.
Wow.
So what are we doing?
I mean, especially when you look at the numbers now, we're dealing with a virus that they're now saying 99.98% of us. So 0.02% of us are at risk.
Yeah.
And yet this is clearly a higher risk than that if you're discussing it, you know, with
Absolutely.
doctors wearing it.
Absolutely. So let me go on real quickly. I just want to read one more thing. He says here, surgical masks are not tested under the NIOSH certification. Here's the important thing about that. When you're putting somebody in personal protective equipment in the workplace, that respirator, that face covering must be tested, must be NIOSH approved. He says right here, surgical masks are not tested. Face mask, cloth face mask. Yeah, they're telling you, just make your own homemade cloth face mask.
Yeah, just sew it on your sewing
Yeah,
machine.
whatever.
It'll be great. It'll work
There's
great.
no testing.
Wear it
any of
6
this.
days straight, hang it on your mirror, stick it in your ashtray,
Exactly.
throw it back on, touch it.
So then lastly, he says under 29 CFR 1910.134, that's the OSHA respirator standard, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, requires use of NIOSH approved respirators for protection against airborne diseases.
There you go.
It's all right here.
And what is being cited in the thesis statement, when I tell you that there's studies that exist, it all started to be, the first clinical studies were done during the SARS outbreak.
Yeah.
And it is here in black and white in numerous studies. And these were a multidisciplinary study. It was not just one group of experts, it was a whole crew. And it's hilarious because it's not funny, but it is funny because it's right here. It talks about how this data from this study, that not only were these hazards to human health, they worked almost 0% of the time because of moisture, liquid diffusion, and pathogen retention. And it even said that trying to double mask, like you mentioned you saw, it causes the most adverse health effects with decreased oxygen, because it already says one mask decreases oxygen. And this data is just, it's monumental because you've got governors and schools and public health departments trying to shame people. It's not about not wanting to wear a mask. If these masks worked, we would be the first people promoting them.
Right.
They are doing more harm than good. And the saddest part of it is when you go to these stores and you see little cartoon character masks, and these companies have no studies on the breathability of these masks. And I just want to close it with this part about this study. When we talk about the OSHA requirements, training is a huge aspect of it. So now you've got people saying it's a one-size-fits-all, you're going to wear the mask. Let's talk about that false sense of security.
Right.
Well, let's say I want to go home. Hey, Dell, let's get some masks and let's epoxy this table because they work. No, the masks are not rated for that type of contaminant.
Right, you even see when I go to Home Depot, it says it covers this, doesn't cover this. If you have paint fumes, everything changes the type of mask you're using. And what really I find shocking is we're saying that these masks protect you from illness, right?
Right.
I couldn't say that about a vitamin.
They
I
don't.
can't say that
Right,
about a drug.
exactly.
I can't. I have to have double-blind safety studies that show that this does what I'm saying it does. Yet every idiot out there, every company is making, as you said, cartoon masks with no, like they are able to like put these out as though they're protecting you when there's nothing that proves that they can. And can I sue? I doubt I can sue them. I'm sure they're protected by PrEP Act or something like that. Now, these are the types of things that are really freaking everybody out. But you mentioned governors and senators and politicians are pushing this. You guys just had a gigantic win up in Michigan.
Yes,
Can you tell
we
me?
did.
So tell me, first of all, it sort of starts out with an idea and a petition. What did you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm the executive director for Stand Up Michigan.
Okay.
And we noticed, I took that position because my business was shut down. And I was really angry about that. And so there were a few business owners in this state that got together and said, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And basically, Stand Up Michigan was born out of the citizens' anger and rebellion at being forced to shut down. But our governor was off the rails.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can't buy paint, you can't buy flower seeds. You can get in a boat, you just can't get in a boat with a motor on it. I mean, that's how crazy this was, right? So when Stand Up Michigan was formed, it basically was just a Facebook group for people to kind of connect and just, oh my gosh, what is going on? Well, it exploded very quickly. And so what we realized is we need to have a platform for people to communicate, and we need to have a platform to educate and inform people, and then activate them. So what we realized is the governor is basing all of her decisions on an old, outdated law because she's not getting her way with the legislature.
Right.
So we realized we need to repeal that old law because once we do, her powers go away.
How old a law are we talking about?
1945.
1940. So she's relying on a law from 1945.
Yes. Cherry-picked language out of an old law to sort of twist it and say, I can do whatever I want. System of checks and balances goes out the window. I can unilaterally control you all indefinitely.
Without having the legislature involved.
Oh, no.
She's going around them.
Exactly.
It's important to note that 1945 law was originally authored to protect public safety against riots, not a public health crisis.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So that's right. And so basically what we did was we created a citizens petition, and we had so many people, hundreds of thousands of people following us and members at that time, that we basically empowered the people and said, we are going to start a petition to repeal this 1945 law, because if we can get this law repealed, then all of her powers go away, her state of emergency goes away. Well, at the same time, the legislature was suing her. Okay, so last week, Friday morning, while we were driving down to Texas, we got the news a half an hour outside of Austin that, well, at 10 a.m. we turned in all the petitions.
Right.
3
How
p.m.
many petitions?
539,037.
37.
How did you get 539,000 petitions?
Grassroots.
How many people were involved in collecting those signatures?
We had over 60,000 petition circulators, citizens, that set up roadside stands. They made their own little signs. Unlock Michigan, sign here.
And Whitmer
and
orders.
it was crazy. Everybody in the state of Michigan that is a conservative knew about this petition and was signing or circulating.
So you turned it in Friday morning?
Yep, so Friday morning. We only needed 342,000, and we got 539,000. And we had a press release. We turned it into the State Board of Elections. It was awesome, right across the street from the Capitol. And then at 3 p.m., the legislature, and that same day, was reviewing, or the Supreme Court was reviewing the legislature's lawsuit, and they ruled in favor of our repeal initiative and struck down her state of emergency.
Wow.
So Michigan is free.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, we celebrated in the car. It was like a loud win. And
Stand Up Michigan.
Yep.
And so victory, you've now taken one of the most, draconian-driven, governors in the state.
Yes.
Obviously, there's some shakeup, there's confusion now. Where do we go from here? Of her, but besides what's going to happen in Michigan, you're going to have to iron that out. What is the message you would have to people around the country that are feeling the same thing? My business is being destroyed. I just saw Regal Cinemas is over. The movie theater chain we've watched for years. Gigantic companies, not just small ones, but then when you think about the mom and pops that just want to make a living and just want to be able to take whatever risk it is to breathe the air.
I know.
What is it you think that you've sort of represented in Michigan with this petition that others can look at trying to do in their state?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway that I would say, and as a business owner myself, because I have been a business owner for many years, and I absolutely refused to shut down. I said, I'm not going to shut down my business. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, because nobody has the right to take away my constitutional rights to operate my business, feed my family, make a living, pay my employees. I just flat out refused. Come what may, I'll deal with the fallout. So we had a couple of people, and you may have heard of Carl the Barber, America's Barber, right?
Yeah.
Carl Mankey was from Michigan, 70-year-old barber who said the same thing. Sorry, ain't shutting down.
Right.
Come what may. Oh, she weaponized her attorney general against him. They threatened to take away his license. Well, nobody can take away your license except the state licensing board, right?
Right.
So he said, let him come for it. He went to court and he won. The governor does not have the right to weaponize her attorney general. They did not win that case. And so basically what that did was set legal case precedent that nobody can take away your business license unless it is an ethical violation or something like that, and the state licensing board rules.
Right.
So my message to people is stand up.
Right.
That's why Stand Up Michigan was born. If we all stand up, they can't control us. So if you're able to, now there are employees, I understand, working in situations where they'll lose their job. I understand that. But to the business owners, to those people in positions like Kristen and I, the reason we are being very vocal is because we don't have a boss.
Right.
And we're in a position that we can stand up. And we've said, if people like us don't, who will? So I would encourage those that are in positions like us, like business owners, just do the right thing. Don't submit to the tyranny, because that's what this is. Stand up and don't be afraid. And you know what? If you get sued, deal with it. It's going to take court cases and legal case precedent to stop this.
That's right.
That's where we've been successful in Michigan. We've taken on those fights head on, and we're winning. We're winning everything that we're putting our boots to the ground and getting people engaged and activated and empowered. And we in Michigan were really fired up, and we got it done.
Kristen, you have stood on the front lines with the military. You've fought for this country. You're on the front lines again, trying to fight for people's businesses, the health of our children. What is it that you want regular people to know that say, hey, I'm not a soldier, I don't know what to do here. What can we do as just normal people trying to get through the situation?
Well, I would say the first thing is let them know that their voice matters. We saw that in Michigan. I mean, we had people like retired elderly people that came out and were running those petitions. Know that your voice matters, and you have the say over what happens to your children. You have the power to do it. If you get enough people in numbers together, you can fight for your freedom, you can fight for individual liberty. We need to remember that those of us that take an oath to the Constitution, that thing clearly says against enemies foreign and domestic. And by definition, what many of these governors are doing is pure tyranny. And I just think it's important to just look at the science. A lot of these governors are saying they're citing science. We have the science. The science is there. We need to look at the risk ratio of what are we being asked to do? What liberties are we being asked to basically forfeit compared to what can we do? What we need to do, what the media is not doing, except for you, Del, is let's think about the hierarchy. How about we eat cleaner? Let's hydrate clean water.
Right.
Let's exercise. Let's build up our immunity. Don't stay in your house.
Right.
Get that vitamin D. Just know that no matter what, if you feel something is unconstitutional in your state, that's what April 30th, when Governor Whitmer said, well, I'm going to extend the state of emergency, everyone came forward and said this is unconstitutional. Well, last Friday we found out it was. So research your own individual state laws. Know that the law of the land is there to help you conserve all of those freedoms. And I know it's scary, but we're going to get through this, and I hope it's sooner rather than later. We look back and just laugh about this. Not the people that have lost their lives, but at how we allowed ourselves to get in this situation.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage people because Garrett Soldano, who is one of the co-founders of Stand Up Michigan, who started the original group, coined a phrase that we have on T-shirts everywhere, and it says, the power of one leads to the power of many. It is amazing what one voice can do. And I've spoken with many groups at the Constitutional Rights Summits.
Yeah.
There was quite a few different groups that we've spoken with, that people are standing up.
Yeah.
And what we need to understand is we need to lower the fear, and we need to look at the data, because this virus is really not that scary.
Right.
And people are terrified. So if we get the facts out there, and we remember we cannot remove all risk from our lives, right? And that's what people are afraid of. They're so afraid of dying that we've stopped living. So look at the data, lower the fear. Don't be afraid to stand up and speak up, because the power of one can really lead to the power of many, and that's exactly what happened in Michigan.
Tammy, Megan, you guys are real heroes. And I'll be honest, of all the people I've had on here, what you're saying is, to me, you're coming from a place of knowledge that nobody else is. I can talk to doctors. I've heard them sort of meander around this and show studies, but you work for OSHA. You know what this is all about. It's really great to have your voices out there. I think really you should, I would consider you're whistleblowers. I mean, you are people that work for OSHA. They are not speaking out. You are. Thank you for doing, your service to this country.
Thank you.
And keep up the great work, all right?
Thank you.
We definitely
Thanks
will.
for having us.
Absolutely.
We're not going away.
If you liked that clip, then be sure to check out our live broadcast of The High Wire every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. You can watch it on Facebook, iTunes, and Twitter. We'll see you there.